Hey kids, I'm Matthew, and welcome to this week's special fact or fiction. On last week's interactive episode on how the Pilgrims banned Christmas and most other religious celebrations in the 1600s, I thought I'd bring you a bit more Christmas cheer by talking about Saturnalia, the Christmas from Roman times. It is a topic full of festivities, fun and games, and even some traditions that we still carry out in the modern day. This is a much more cheery and interesting topic, and personally I'm really excited to talk to you about this with you, and I'm really excited to learn about the world of Roman celebration works. On today's show, I'll be exploring different aspects of Saturnalia and how they link up with your lives in the modern day, and how traditions started in ancient Roman times and have affected the Christmas that we all celebrate at home today, even decorating our own Christmas tree in the traditional Saturnalia style, outdoors like it was traditionally done. On our journey, I'll be showing you related landmarks like a church, a real Christmas tree, and maybe even some Roman-style columns, all within a small town of the boundary of the hometown we call Whittam. I really hope this is going to be really exciting and interesting trip into history for you and I, and one which will be informative and bring the world of ancient Romans right to your screen. So, get ready for an exciting, action-packed adventure into the vivid and interesting 1st century AD and the amazing world of Saturnalia, the Roman Christmas. So, without further ado, we go to our special package on who Saturn was and why he was worshipped.
Saturn, also known as Saturnus, was a god of agriculture, time and harvest. Agriculture is basically the science and practice of farming. Basically, he made sure that everyone had food and clothes. He was also a god of time, and so they thought they needed to please him in order to keep time moving along correctly. How cool is that? He was also seen as a god of wealth. As a result, all of the public wealth that Rome had was stored in his temple, where it was all protected by guards and soldiers to make sure that the money was safe. This made him seem very old, but also very intelligent, which is how the Romans wanted him to appear. The bonds were only removed during his festival Saturnalia to show the liberation that the festival brought upon Rome. When the Romans found out about the Greeks' religious system, they copied most of their gods and simply changed their name to the Latin version. How cheeky of them! Anyway, that is how the Greek gods came to be and how Saturn was recognized as a god. Saturn even had a family. He had a wife, a mother, a father, siblings, even a child. The gods were certainly busy people. His mother was the Roman goddess Terra. Terra was the goddess of the earth. Her name comes from the word terrain, which is what kind of ground the earth has. For instance, a field will have grassy terrain. Her father was Uranus. Again, named after another planet, Uranus was a Roman god personifying the sky, and he was the wife of Terra. Together, they ruled the land and the sky and kept everything working as it should be. Saturn also had a wife. Her name is Ops. Ops is a fertility deity, meaning she brings food to the Romans and keeps them happy. Saturn also had quite a few children with Ops. Their names were Jupiter, Ceres, Vesta, Neptune and Pluto. Saturn's children would go on to be Titans and then Olympians of Rome. How awesome is that? The original square where people would come and worship the almighty god Saturn was originally just a square bit of pavement where people would come and kneel. Eventually, there was a small room in the back for priests to stay in. And then, even more changes were slowly made. It had a great entranceway with many columns, so people could come and go as they pleased. Eventually, all that was left of it are the massive support columns to show just how big it really was. It burned down when Rome was burnt, but it was rebuilt so people could still come in and kneel and pay their respects. This was made up of a wife and 5 kids, who would later go on to become champions and Olympiads and Titans of Rome. Saturn's temple was really awesome. It had 4 walls, a priest's chamber, and a fairly large entranceway. Saturn was worshipped for his powers over agriculture and harvest, which brought the Romans much happiness and food. He was also seen as a god of wealth. As a result, all of the public wealth that Rome had was stored in his temple, where it was all protected by guards and soldiers to make sure that the money was safe. Finally, he was bound by cloth all year round until the festival of Saturnalia, to show the freedom and liberty that the festival represented. He was a fascinating god with a fascinating family and a fascinating life, and was a really cool learning opportunity for all of us.
Wow, how awesome was that? Saturn really does seem like a really awesome god to stand by and worship, especially because he feeds you. Now, there's another important topic that we might really need to talk about, and that is how Saturnalia is traditionally celebrated, and how it also came to be, and what its origins were, because, let's be honest, it's a very different celebration depending on what part of Roman history you look at it, which can make things very confusing indeed. At first, only lasting one day, Saturnalia was the Roman winter celebration of solstice. The winter solstice is the shortest day of the year, around 22nd December in the northern hemisphere and 21 June in the southern hemisphere. It was celebrated for a range of periods, and was throughout Rome's history, the celebration has taken on a lot of different timescales, from 2 to 3 days, and it's changed to 3. The Emperor Chagua extended it to 4. By the end of the 1st century, it became a 5-day festival celebrated in 7 days. The idea of celebration was to show how thankful they were to Saturn, and to show their appreciation of his feeding and controlling their time and keeping everything in balance for them. That is why they were partying and feasting, and even the slaves were free. It was good. It was certainly a good celebration for a god, and Saturn had worked hard to earn it throughout the year. Celebration started when pigs were sacrificed to the gods at the temple of Saturn, and the priest would shout, "Lo, Saturnalia!" They sacrificed as an offering to Saturn, along with the festival to celebrate how much he had helped them and give them something back to such a generous god. This would be a start of festivities and celebration, and boy were they all fun. Those same pigs were served up the very next day, when the slaves that were usually serving their masters were free from punishment for the whole day. Once more, for that first evening meal, their masters would serve them. How exciting! The evening would be concluded with people making merry and games. Everyone would be happy. Even the slaves were allowed to have a good time, eat and drink well, and participate in the fun, even though they had to go back to serving their masters the next day. But they greatly appreciated their freedom, even for a day. The Romans would use dice to decide one person at the table to be Saturnalian king. This king or queen could be anyone, even a slave, and they would decide what the others would do. Whatever the Saturnalian king said had to be carried out. They could force the others to sing, dance, or even entertain, or do anything the Saturnalian king or queen wanted them to do, which certainly ended in a lot of laughs and happy times. Historians also discovered that actually Saturnalia did not come to Rome as one whole thing, rather as many parts that had been constantly changed before they reached Rome, when they were combined together. Thus say, it should come as no surprise, because of how it changed and morphs ahead of modern day Christmas. Yes, you heard it right, Christmas was linked to Saturnalia, and we'll hear more about that soon, kids. It really shouldn't be surprising that some of the Romans managed to nick a few things from other people, considering they stole their gods from the Greek, they stole the land they lived in from its previous owners, so we should expect the Romans to nick someone else's ideas as well. These certainly were some naughty little thieves. However, it worked very well, and the Romans managed to slot all of those different parts of the celebration together to make a whole thing. So, Saturnalia certainly had some awesome traditions. The parties were big and very social, and the games were all really fun, like rolling around the dice to decide who should have to be the king or queen, and feasting until you stuffed full of yummy meat and bread. Even the slaves got a bit of freedom when their masters got a taste of what they put their poor slaves through. Now we move on to our celebration about how this small celebration of the gods became Christmas. Now, the one linked to Saturnalia are some of the easiest to understand. How cool is that? This is because it's heavily related to our celebration, Christmas. Christmas means eating a lot, handing out presents and cards, and even watching funny movies around the TV. And spending quality time with all your family. even having to tolerate the Brussels sprouts and Christmas dinner. Oh, you'll know how disgusting they can be. In Roman times, there was no TV to sit around and watch what was going on in the world. Imagine that. No way to enjoy the Doctor Who Christmas special, or the Queen's speech, or watch funny movies or programmes with the family. Well, I didn't have to eat Brussels sprouts, so that's a plus. They had to entertain themselves, and they had to appease the gods, which is why Saturnalia was brought about. However, most of the traditional things that we have in our Christmas celebrations were actually carried over from Saturnalia. Even though it was indeed a pagan ceremony, and Christmas we know today as Christian, some aspects still carry over. When Romans were celebrating Saturnalia, they were found that they would hand out small gifts to people close to them. These were commonly made up of symbolic candles, which would then be burned during Solemn Victus to try and bring the sun god back and make the gods happy. Also, they would hand out little clay dolls called Saturnalia. In addition to solid gifts, often small packages of food were given out. That could be made of pickled fish, nuts, dates, prunes, or even small amounts of money given to some of the closest friends and simple friends in the street as an offer of kindness and good spirit. These gifts would be carried on the person who was handing them out, giving them to close friends and family, but also to people you recognise on the street, people he was simply friends with. They would give gifts of slightly less value to those they just knew as friends, maybe tradesmen or builders and clothes makers. They would still hand out many lovely gifts to them, and Saturnalia was a festival of liberty and life, and was a celebration which requires thanks to be given to those who are close to him. Another thing we commonly do in modern times is decorate our houses with tinsel and wreaths and trees in order to celebrate Christmas. Well, it may surprise you to know the Romans did this too. We know from books that were written at the time it was traditional for Romans to deck their halls with laurel wreaths and green trees, as well as spreading candles and lamps around. These were meant for symbols of life and were designed to ward away darkness. Away from home, the people of Rome would also dine together to celebrate such a special and revered occasion. Students in the Athens Academy would dine together, such as American students in a European university, to celebrate their Thanksgiving celebration, even though they were not actually in their own hometown or home country. And now we hand back over to myself at the school field, where we're prepared to talk about the festival of Solemn Victus.
Well, hello, and welcome to the New Extons Academy field. We are here to talk about the celebration of Solemn Victus. Solemn Victus was the Roman god of sun and a patron saint of soldiers, as he watched over them. He made sure the Romans fought well in battle and returned to their loved ones without any harm. His job was to ensure that the sun rose and fell during the winter solstice, when the sun was at its shortest. People felt the need to worship him. If he didn't, then the sun would disappear and they'd be in darkness forever. They did this by lighting candles. The candles symbolised their hope for light and that the sun would rise. The idea was that Sol would see the candles from above and use his powers as God to bring the sun back to life. Of course, we know today that we are spinning around the sun endlessly, but the Romans had no way of knowing that. They thought they had to light the lights outside, which is why we are here outside just as the sun is setting. I am going to light this here candle, and hopefully the sun god will see this offering and bring back the sun. Well, I've just received word we need to wait for other people to light their candles, so hopefully they're lighting their candles too. Well, we must hope that other people are lighting their candles so the sun god may notice them. It only works if many people light candles. This is because they need to see it from all the way up in God's world. It is miles and miles away from Earth, so it'll have to be really, really bright for the sun god to see them. Remember, kids, you mustn't play with fire or matches at all, and only do so in the presence of an adult. And you must have safety features in place in case emergencies happen, like a bucket of water or sand. So, to sum up, Solemn Victus was the god of the sun who made it rise and fall. At least that's what the Romans thought.
Well, that was certainly a very interesting lesson about Solemn Victus. I never thought the Romans tried lighting candles to bring the sun back. It's an interesting thought though, maybe I'll try it sometime. Anyway, on to our next subject. We have our very own Saturnalian gift. that we can all make. Now kids, now's the time to ask your parents to do some cutting for you and leave the room so we can make a traditional gift in secret. How exciting! Now, what you will need for this is some sticky tape, some safety scissors, some chocolate coins. Now, you could make this dried nuts, food, anything like that, or a small unlit candle, but we'll go for chocolate coins for now. Now then, what you'll need to do is take your small chocolate coins and put them on the paper. Then, like so. Bit of a mess up there. Like so. Then what you need to do, now, it's a tricky bit. You need to do the very fiddly task of measuring out the paper so it's 30 centimetres. You need to get an older sibling or a parent to do this if you're unsure how to measure it properly. Then, using the safety scissors, you need to cut the paper to 30 centimetres long. Now, ask a parent to do this if you're scared about hurting yourself. Then, what you need to do is get each corner of the paper and fold it in on itself so it makes a protective layer around the chocolate coins. Now, what you need to do is get your sticky tape and cut off a very small piece with your safety scissors. Then you need to stick the corners together, like I am doing now. And there you have it, a wonderful traditional Saturnalia gift to give to a loved one or a friend of yours.